started on a cold Tuesday night in late November, when the air was thick with fog and silence hung heavily outside the windows. Jason Miller, a 32-year-old freelance graphic designer, was working late in his small, rented house on the outskirts of Wichita, Kansas. The house, surrounded by open fields and scattered woods, was usually eerily quiet past 10 p.m., the kind of quiet where even a creaking floorboard felt like a gunshot. Jason was sipping his fourth cup of coffee, eyes fixed on his computer screen, when he heard it. Knock, knock. A slow, deliberate knock at the front door. 3 taps, evenly spaced. Too firm to be the wind, too calculated to be accidental. He glanced at the digital clock, 12:13 a.m. Who the hell would be knocking at this hour? He stood cautiously, heart already beginning to race. The living room was dark, save for the glow from his screen. He approached the door, peeking through the small window beside it. At first he saw nothing. Just fog stretching endlessly across his front yard. Then, as if materializing from the mist, 2 figures came into view. Children, a boy and a girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, standing side by side. They were dressed strangely, old-fashioned clothes, too clean for kids wandering at midnight. Their heads hung slightly down, but their posture was stiff, unmoving. Jason opened the inner door but left the screen door locked. "Hey, are you two okay?" he called out. "Are you lost?" The girl raised her head, slightly, her voice flat, emotionless. "We need to come in. Please, it's cold." Jason felt an odd pressure in his chest. Something about her tone didn't feel right. It lacked fear or urgency. It sounded rehearsed. "Where are your parents?" he asked. "We can't come in unless you invite us," the boy said, lifting his head. Jason's stomach dropped. Their eyes, pitch black, no whites, no irises, just a void, bottomless and absorbing, like looking into a night without stars. A chill gripped his spine as instinct screamed at him to shut the door. "Sorry, I can't help you," he stammered, stepping back. The girl's lips twitched into something that might have been a smile. Too wide, too wrong. "You will let us in," she said. "Everyone does." Jason slammed the door, locked it, backed away like the house itself had become unsafe. Outside, silence returned. When he dared to peek through the curtain a minute later, they were gone. But the fog remained. Jason didn't sleep that night. He sat in the far corner of his bedroom, a baseball bat in his lap, eyes fixed on the door. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind against the siding made his heart skip. By 5 a.m., the fog had lifted, and sunlight began to seep through the curtains. Still no sign of the children. No tiny footprints on the porch. No knock. Nothing. He told himself it had to be a prank, some creepy kids pulling a Halloween leftover stunt. But those eyes, Jason didn't tell anyone. Who would believe him? He barely believed it himself. Instead, he dove into work and tried to forget. Days passed. No sign of the children, no strange knocks, no black eyes in the night. Until Friday. He was on a video call with a client when the screen froze. A burst of static hissed through his headphones, making him flinch. Then the screen flickered and turned black, just for a second. When it came back, his reflection in the screen wasn't his own. A pale face, empty black eyes, a small smile. Jason ripped his headset off and slammed the laptop shut. His heart pounded so loudly he couldn't hear his own thoughts. He didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Jason drove into town to get away from the house, hoping sometime in the noisy coffee shop might shake off the fear. He scrolled through local forums on his phone, searching for anything about weird children or late-night visitors. He found it on a thread titled, "Black-Eye Kids, Have You Seen Them?" Dozens of stories, all eerily similar. 2 kids knocked at my door. They asked to come in. They said they were lost and needed to use the phone. They had completely black eyes. They disappeared. One comment made Jason's blood run cold. They show up when you're alone, and once you see them, they don't stop. Jason shut off his phone, looked out the coffee shop window, and froze. Across the street, under a flickering street lamp, stood the same boy and girl. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They were waiting. Jason blinked hard, hoping his eyes were playing tricks on him. But they weren't. Across the street, the two children stood in the same stiff posture, gazes locked onto him through the cafe window. The boy's head tilted slightly, like a curious animal. The girl's expression remained blank, but her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. Jason grabbed his backpack and bolted from the coffee shop. He didn't look back until he was in his car, engine roaring. The spot under the street lamp was empty. They were gone again. He sped home, windows up, every mirror checked twice, but the road was clear. Nothing behind him. No children. Just silence. That night, Jason installed a new security system, motion cameras, floodlights, window alarms. He tried to convince himself it was all overreacting, that he was just sleep-deprived. But deep down, he knew. They were real. At 2:44 a.m., the floodlight tripped. Jason sat upright in bed, gripping his phone. The motion camera app showed a grainy live feed from the front porch. At first, there was only fog, then a small figure emerged. The boy. He walked toward the camera, slowly, deliberately, and looked straight into the lens. Jason's screen went black. The camera was fried. He ran to the front door, heart pounding, peeking through the peephole. Empty. Nothing but swirling mist. Then came the whisper. Faint, right beside his ear. We just want to come in. Jason spun around. No one was there. His breath caught in his throat as the room chilled. The temperature had dropped, his breath now visible. He turned toward the hallway and froze. The girl was standing at the end, inside the house. But that wasn't possible. Every door and window was still locked. She smiled, slow and wide, and took a step forward. Her eyes were twin voids, and her skin was pale as bone. Jason backed into the wall, scrambling for the nearest object, a lamp ready to swing. But before he could move, she was gone. No trace, no sound. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. He didn't dare. At dawn, Jason drove to the only place that felt safe, the local library. He needed answers, and there, buried in newspaper archives, he found them. Reports from the 1950s, 1970s, 1996. Different towns, same story. Black-eyed children. Uninvited visitors. Vanished victims. And one headline, barely visible in the faded paper. Those who let them in were never seen again. Jason stared at the yellowed newspaper clippings, fingertips trembling. The article from 1996 was the most detailed. It told the story of a man named Harold Lyman, a Vietnam veteran who lived alone in a trailer on the edge of Santa Fe, New Mexico. One winter night, he claimed two children came to his door. They asked to be let in, said their parents would be along soon. Harold refused, but their persistence haunted him for weeks. The article said he survived, but was later institutionalized, rambling about black-eyed devils that whispered to him through the vents. Jason found a name at the bottom of the article, reporter Marie Kellner. He searched the local records. Marie was still alive, retired, living just a few hours away. He drove the next morning, fueled by desperation and dread. Marie lived in a small, cluttered house lined with bookshelves and old typewriters. When Jason introduced himself and mentioned the article, her demeanor changed. "You've seen them," she said flatly. Jason nodded. "They came to my door. Twice." Marie motioned for him to sit. Her voice was calm but firm. "They aren't children," she said. "Not really. They wear that shape, but it's just a disguise. A test." "A test?" Jason asked. "To see if you'll surrender your will, if you'll give them permission. That's all they need. You say come in, and you're theirs." Jason swallowed hard. "What happens if I don't?" "They'll try again and again, until either you cave or something else happens." Marie stood and disappeared into another room, returning with a small box. Inside was a cassette tape labeled Harold Lyman, final session. He recorded this the night before he vanished, she said. I kept it all these years, never had the courage to listen to it again. Jason took the tape and left, heart pounding the whole drive home. That night, he found an old tape recorder and sat on the couch, the house still and dimly lit. He pressed play. The tape hissed. Then Harold's voice came on, ragged and panicked. They're here. They're inside the vents now. I can hear them whispering my name. Hiss. I didn't let them in. I didn't. But they're not leaving. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was recorded. Sharp, real. Jason froze. I see their eyes. Oh God, I see them in the walls. Static. Then a voice. Not Harold's. Childlike. Cold. Now you've heard us. Now we can come. The tape ended. And somewhere in Jason's house, something knocked. Jason stared at the cassette player, breath shallow. That knock, it wasn't just on the tape. It came from inside his house. He slowly stood, every hair on his body standing up, and turned toward the hallway. The air felt thick, electric. The walls themselves seemed to hum faintly, as if whispering secrets too low to hear. Then came another knock. Tap, tap, tap. This time it was unmistakably coming from the wall behind the living room bookshelf. Jason hesitated, then grabbed the bat he kept near the couch. He moved cautiously toward the shelf, pressing his ear to the drywall. Silence. Until whisper. Jason. He stumbled backward, heart racing. That was his name, spoken in that same calm, flat child's voice. He didn't wait. He ran to the garage, grabbed a hammer, and began pulling the bookshelf away from the wall. Dust flew. Books clattered to the floor. He smashed into the drywall, tearing away chunks with a frenzy born of terror. Behind the plaster, insulation and wooden beams. No secret room, no hiding space. But the moment he exposed the studs, cold air poured out. It wasn't possible, but it felt like the inside of a freezer. And in the dimness behind the beams, eyes. Two black eyes stared back at him through the narrow gap. Jason screamed and stumbled back, dropping the hammer. The eyes didn't move, didn't blink. Then, slowly, they faded into the darkness, like smoke dissolving into air. The next day, Jason left his house and checked into a motel across town. He didn't care how much it cost. He needed space, warmth, people, anything but that empty, haunted house. But the children weren't bound by walls. That night, in the middle of a well-lit motel room, Jason turned on the TV to drown his thoughts. But instead of the news, the screen flickered and went to static, just like before. Then, two shadows appeared in the fuzz. Small, still, watching. Jason grabbed the remote, pressed every button. Nothing worked. Then came the sound, low and mechanical, but clear. We don't like being ignored. The motel lights flickered. The air turned icy. Jason ran out of the room, barefoot, into the parking lot, trembling. People stared, but he didn't care. He knew what he saw, and he knew they had followed him. They would always follow him, because now he'd listened. Jason didn't return to the motel room. He drove for hours, barely thinking, stopping only when exhaustion finally overpowered fear. At a rundown rest stop off I-135, he parked and locked the doors. He leaned his head back, trying to breathe, trying to convince himself this wasn't happening. But deep down, he knew. They were in his shadow now. That night, he dreamed of static and whispers, voices chanting his name over and over. He jolted awake at 3:03 a.m., drenched in sweat, the inside of the car so cold the windshield had frosted. And in the rearview mirror, just for a second, he saw them. Two pale faces in the back seat, expressionless and still. Jason screamed, twisted around, but the car was empty. Again, but something new lingered in the air now. A strange metallic scent, like ozone and rust. He started the car and sped off, afraid to even blink. By sunrise, he found himself in a small town called Halstead. He booked a room at a local inn and tried to stay awake by researching everything he could find on black-eyed children. He found stories from all over the world: Canada, England, even Japan. Every account eerily similar: midnight knocks, emotionless children, overwhelming dread. And a warning repeated again and again: do not make eye contact, do not invite them in, do not listen. Jason had broken all three rules. Later that afternoon, he went to the bathroom to splash cold water on his face. As he stared into the mirror, he noticed something strange. His reflection wasn't synced with his movements. He tilted his head left. His reflection went right. He stepped back. So did it, but it didn't blink. And then slowly the reflection's eyes turned black. Not just the pupils, but the entire eye, from lid to lid, swallowed in darkness. Jason backed away, heart hammering. The lights in the bathroom flickered and buzzed, and a deep pressure built in his ears like being dragged underwater. He turned to run, but standing in the bathroom doorway was the girl. Silent, still, inside the room. Her voice was a whisper, yet it filled the space like thunder. You should have never looked at us. The room went black. Jason woke up on the floor. His mouth was dry. His head ached like he'd been hit with a brick. He blinked at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above him. Unfamiliar. He was no longer in the bathroom. He was in bed. Back in the inn. But he had no memory of walking there. No memory of anything after the girl appeared. He scrambled for his phone. The time was 6:27 p.m. the next day. He'd lost almost 24 hours. Jason sat up, skin crawling. Something about the room felt wrong. The mirror above the dresser was shattered. All the lights were off, and scratched into the wooden floor in jagged, uneven strokes were words, "We're almost inside." His hands trembled as he checked his body. No wounds, no bruises, just a mark, a small circular burn on his left wrist. It stung when he touched it, like it was fresh. Jason left the inn without checking out. He couldn't stay, not another second. He drove aimlessly until he reached a gas station just outside a town called Clearwater. The cashier, an old man with cloudy eyes, took one look at Jason and froze. "They've marked you," the man said in a hushed voice. Jason stiffened. "What?" The old man pointed to Jason's wrist. "That's a claim mark. You didn't let them in, did you?" Jason shook his head slowly. "No, but I heard them. I saw them. I think they came inside on their own." The man's face turned pale. "Then it's worse. Much worse." He reached under the counter and pulled out a dusty, leather-bound notebook. Inside were pages of symbols, names, coordinates, things that looked ancient and impossible. He flipped to a drawing of two small figures with pitch-black eyes. "This has happened before," he said. "Every 20 or 30 years they come back, always looking for someone to anchor them." "Anchor them?" Jason asked. "To let them stay, to give them a form in this world. Most people don't survive that long once marked. You've lasted longer than most." Jason's throat tightened. "So what do I do?" The man hesitated. "There's a woman in Elkhart. She calls herself a veil reader. If anyone knows how to sever the connection, it's her." Jason took the name, the address, the warning. And as he left the gas station, the cashier called out one last time, "Don't fall asleep, son. That's when they're strongest." Jason didn't reply. Because in the passenger's side mirror, he saw the girl again, smiling. Jason drove through the night, eyes bloodshot, body trembling from caffeine and fear. Every blink felt like a gamble, as if the children waited behind each shutter of his eyelids. He reached Elkhart just after 3 a.m., following the old man's directions to a house at the edge of a dense forest. It didn't look like much. Wooden siding, paint peeling, wind chimes made bones. But something about the place made the hair on his neck stand up. Before he could knock, the door creaked open. "You're late," a voice rasped from inside. A woman stepped into view, tall, thin, her face deeply lined like bark on an old tree. Her eyes were a pale gray, almost translucent. "I'm Mara," she said. "Come in, quickly." Jason hesitated. "Do I have to invite you in too?" he asked. Mara gave a cold smile. "You'd be wise to stop making jokes." Inside, the house was filled with candles and dried herbs. Symbols were drawn in chalk on the floor, and dozens of mirrors were covered in dark cloth. Jason sat across from Mara at a small wooden table. She poured a thick black liquid into 2 small cups. He didn't drink. "They're in your shadow now," she said. "I can feel them watching through you." Jason nodded, voice low. "They've marked me." Mara closed her eyes, muttering in a language Jason didn't recognize. Then she reached out and grabbed his marked wrist. He winced. The burn flared with heat. "They've chosen you as a conduit," she said. "Someone between worlds. You've opened too many doors, heard too much. But we may still have time." She stood and uncovered a large cracked mirror. Its surface shimmered strangely, like water. "They move between reflections," Mara said. "Mirrors, screens, glass. That's their path. That's how they follow. We have to close the veil they're slipping through." She handed Jason a knife, bone-handled, the blade etched with ancient symbols. "This is consecrated iron. If they appear again, you cut their tether. Do not hesitate." Jason held the knife tight. Mara began the ritual, chanting in a low rhythmic voice. Candles flickered. The air thickened. The mirror grew darker, rippling. Then, the reflection changed. Jason wasn't in it anymore. The girl was. She stood on the other side of the glass, smiling. Her black eyes locked onto Jason's. She pressed her palm to the surface of the mirror, and a crack split across it. "She's crossing!" Mara shouted. "Jason, now!" Jason raised the knife as the girl's hand burst through the mirror, dripping with darkness. The candles blew out. He swung the blade and everything went black. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, his breath ragged in the pitch-black room. He couldn't feel the knife anymore. The air was thick with dread, pressing down on him like a weight. His mind swirled, disoriented, trapped somewhere between wakefulness and something else. A sound pierced the silence. A soft tapping. Knock, knock, knock. Jason's eyes snapped open, and the darkness seemed to fold around him. He was no longer in the small, candlelit house with Mara. He was lying on the cold, cracked floor of a room that wasn't familiar. The mirrors on the walls were shattered, each one reflecting not his face, but the girl's. She stood behind him, her black eyes empty, consuming everything in their path. He scrambled to his feet, heart racing. The room felt wrong, distorted. Everything was just off. The mirrors, the shadows, the floor beneath him felt unstable, like it was shifting, warping. And the whispers. "Jason." They echoed from every direction. His name soft at first, then louder, more urgent. He spun around but saw nothing but darkness. "You shouldn't have tried to escape." The girl stepped forward from the dark. Her smile was wide, unnatural. Her eyes glowed now, a deep, endless black. Jason backed away, panic rising in his chest. But there was nowhere to go. Every step he took felt like he was sinking deeper, as though the ground itself was swallowing him whole. "You can't run from us," she whispered, her voice dripping with malice. Jason's breath hitched as he remembered Mara's words. Cut their tether. He looked down at his wrist, where the burns still seethed with a heat that almost felt alive. There was no time. He needed to act now, or else he'd be swallowed whole by the darkness, by them. The girl advanced, her fingers stretching toward him. Jason gripped the knife in his hand, the weight of it grounding him. He didn't hesitate. With a roar of defiance, he plunged it into the air between them, into the space where her form blurred and shimmered. The knife connected with something real. and the room screamed with a sound that rattled the walls, the floor, his very bones. The mirrors cracked again, but this time they shattered into dust. The darkness recoiled, and with a final, piercing shriek, the girl vanished, her form dissolving into the nothingness. The room fell silent. Jason's hand still clutched the knife, his knuckles white from the grip. He wasn't sure what just happened. His body was numb, the air around him heavy, and yet the presence of the children, they, was gone. But he knew better than to feel relief. The girl might be gone, but the mark on his wrist still burned, and the whispers had not stopped. They would never stop. He had done something to sever the connection, but at what cost? The room was still, silent, empty. But Jason could feel the truth growing heavy on his chest. They were still watching. They would be back. They always came back. Jason's hands shook as he dropped the knife, staring at his wrist. The mark, still glowing faintly, refused to fade. He had severed the tether, but the connection remained. Somehow something had been left behind. A door left ajar. His mind raced with questions. What had he done? How could he be free of them? He didn't have answers. The only thing he knew for sure was that the girl, the children, they weren't finished with him. They couldn't be. After the room settled, Jason stood slowly, his body stiff, his head heavy. He moved toward the door, but as he crossed the threshold, something caught his eye. A reflection in the hallway mirror. It was his own face, but not quite. The reflection was wrong. His eyes, they were black, empty, just like theirs. Panic surged in his chest as the reflection's lips curled into a smile. Jason slammed the door shut, backing away into the corner, breathing fast, trying to make sense of it all. The whispering began again, louder this time, coming from the mirrors in every room. Jason had been marked. But now he was something else too. He was one of them. The girl's voice echoed through the house, sweet and mocking. You've accepted our invitation. He could feel the darkness pulling at him. The mark on his wrist throbbed, spreading up his arm. His body felt cold, lifeless. He wanted to scream, to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He could hear them, feel them, closing in on him. The children were inside him now. It wasn't just the mark anymore. His reflection, the whispers, the strange sensation that his own body didn't belong to him. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. The children had won. The door to the house opened. Tap, tap, tap. Jason stumbled forward, his eyes locked onto the doorway, knowing what he would find before he even saw them. Two figures stood in the doorway, small, pale, with jet black eyes. And they were smiling. We've been waiting, they whispered in unison, their voices like 1,000 whispers woven together. It's time to come home. Jason's feet moved without his command. He didn't resist. He couldn't. The mark on his wrist burned with unbearable heat, pulling him toward them, toward the darkness. As he stepped forward, the last of his will faded. His vision blurred. He could feel the world slipping away as the children reached for him. The door slammed shut behind him. The house was gone. Everything was gone. And the darkness was eternal. Jason woke up, but it wasn't to sunlight or the noise of the world. There was no sound at all, only the oppressive silence pressing against him. His eyes fluttered open to reveal a world that wasn't his. He was standing, no, floating, in a place that seemed to stretch on forever. No ground beneath his feet, no sky above, just endless grayness, like the inside of a fog, dense and suffocating. He couldn't tell where he was, only that it was wrong. Everything was wrong. The darkness was alive here, and it whispered, just out of reach, words he couldn't understand but could feel. It was a language that didn't belong to this world. It belonged to something ancient, something older than time itself. And then he heard it, a soft, hollow voice in the distance, calling his name. Jason! He whipped around, his heart racing. There was no one, just the fog swirling in unnatural patterns. Jason, you're not alone. The whisper was louder now, closer. It was coming from everywhere, inside his mind, inside his soul. The voice was pulling at him, guiding him, but he couldn't escape it. Then suddenly the mist parted, and there they were. The children, their eyes, those endless black voids, stared at him as they stepped forward from the shadows, but this time their bodies weren't still. They moved like shadows themselves, twisting and turning, their limbs bending in unnatural ways. "We told you," one of them whispered. "You're one of us now." Jason backed away, but his feet wouldn't move. It was as if the gray fog had clung to him, anchoring him to the ground, binding him in place. "No, no, I'm not," Jason gasped, his voice cracking. But the girl was the first to reach him. Her smile was wide, too wide. The blackness of her eyes spread across her face, consuming every feature, until nothing remained but the void. "You opened the door," she said softly, her voice dripping with an ancient hunger. "And we came through." Jason's breath quickened. He didn't remember opening anything, but he felt it now. That same emptiness inside him, that pull, like a door that had opened inside his soul. "It's too late," she whispered, as the others closed in around him. "You've always belonged to us." Jason's body convulsed as the fog around him thickened, the whispers growing louder, wrapping around his mind like chains. And as the last of his thoughts faded, the endless night pulled him in, swallowing him whole. The children were always here, waiting, watching, because they were never truly gone. Jason had become part of their world now, a permanent reflection of the darkness that had once hunted him. And the black-eyed children had won.